Carlos Nelson with the Kansas City Business Association, and today we have another special guest, Mr. Sidney King. He's president of the bank that I bank at, Liberty Bank and Trust. Welcome to the program, Sidney.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's always a pleasure to be in your company.
All right, I like that. I like that. I want to talk some economics today, and first of all, tell our audience a little bit about your bank.
Okay. Well, I'm with Liberty Bank and Trust. Liberty was headquartered out of New Orleans, founded in 1972. Today we are the second largest African American owned bank in America. We are located in 8 different markets. We have expanded our footprint from the humble beginnings into New Orleans, expanding into Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Jackson, Mississippi, Kansas City, Kansas, Kansas City, Missouri, Detroit, Michigan, Chicago, Illinois, Montgomery and Tuskegee, Alabama, and loan production offices in Houston, Texas. We're filling up the middle of the country and growing to be, we will one day be the first billion-dollar black-owned bank in America.
That's excellent. And audience, remember where we're at. We're at the Kansas City Business Association show, and I've had a lot of off-camera conversations with Sidney about the African American business community and our overall economic health. And how do you see the economic climate for entrepreneurs here in Kansas City?
You know, there is a great market here. There is a great market in the African American community, a great potential. One of the challenges, as I see it, as in the banking industry, is finding ways to work together. Because we have businesses in our community, but we don't get the support of those businesses that we should be getting for our communities to help our businesses grow. Because one of the key things in African American owned businesses, they predominantly hire African American and somewhat African American youth. Those youth don't get the jobs in the other industries and the other businesses. So we have to develop those businesses and grow and support the businesses in the African American communities, because those are the businesses that support and hire our youth and keep them, getting them great business acumen to help them to grow and think more business related.
That's what Cascade Media has been able to do. Really, we started our company with high school kids out of Lincoln Prep, and they really helped us develop and grow. And when we have been able to generate some revenue, we've been able to circulate that back in our community, even though it's been not what I would call a windfall, but I would say that the kids and the young adults that's worked with us, if you give them $100, $200, and they're building their skill set, which is more important than that check, that will allow them to enter in different occupations. But when you don't have African American businesses in your community that can employ young adults that look like yourself, then they're not able to build their skill set to go.
Well, you know, you think about it, back in the day when we were coming up in school, we did not have exposure to a lot of different business opportunities and business ideas. When we were sitting there in class, the people who were from other communities, they had better training. They got a lot more training at home because their parents talked about business. Our parents talked about work and ways to make ends meet and to keep the bills paid. We didn't get that business exposure at home, whereas they were getting that training sitting around the dinner table.
Exactamundo. Now, the interview that I did just before you came on, my godbrother, John David DeCapo, that's what he talked about when I asked him where his entrepreneurism came from. And he talked about when he was really in junior high school, going into dad's business. You started in the kitchen doing meatballs, and you rose through the ranks. And when you don't have businesses in your community that can employ your youth, they don't get that business experience. They don't get that mindset. And that's very important.
And see, my father was a stonemason, and I used to go and work with him. I carry a brick tongue with one hand with 12 bricks in it, a bucket of mortar in the other hand, walking up 3 flights of stairs, keeping those brick layers
That's
working.
interesting.
But you know, the thing was, That was hard work, and every step I took, it said stay in school, because I didn't want to do that kind of work the rest of my life.
And tell me this, with him having those trades, we just got finished looking at a interview with a John Webster, and he was talking about that we had those skill sets. Right. That put the meat and the bread and the potatoes on you to allow you to get this education.
It fed us and it allowed me to stay in school in order to get that education. You know, I mean, he worked hard all of his life. You know, he worked hard all of his life. He started laying bricks at 13. And, you know, it was not what he wanted me to do. He wanted me to have a better lifestyle than he had. So he encouraged me, go to school, get a good education.
How long have you been in Kansas City?
I've been in Kansas City now 10 and a half years.
What do you see the economic climate from a banking point of view for African Americans? Because earlier today we were out at Neighbors Construction, and I think I had that conversation with you. And Roger, who owns the company, we were talking, he was saying banking and being able to secure financing for any decent business it's not as available. Mm-hmm. So from a banking perspective, how do you see that?
You know, from the African American community, you know, looking at the construction trade, you know, you talk about that. There are a lot of people who have great skills. They have great abilities. They have ability to look at a job and say what needs to be done there and get that job worked on and fixed up. I mean, they know what they're doing. The challenge that we see in banking is that many of them don't have good financial records. They don't keep good financial records, and that makes it difficult for us to lend at times. Now, there are some programs that are coming about and, you know, that have been bannered about that's going to work and help those contractors get financing, but the key thing, they have to get their finances together.
But in the financial climate, and I think I mentioned this to you when I used to have my construction company, I had $1 million bonding capacity. That was back in the 80s, but I never had more than a $20,000 line of credit. And that, you know, that doesn't even match.
No, it doesn't. I mean, how are you going to work a job with just that on? Yeah. Because one of the challenges that many of our contractors have is they need working capital support. There are jobs out there, you know, you can find the job, you get the job, but you got to be able to carry the job for 45 to 60 days. It's going to take you 30 days to get your invoice in before you can invoice them, and sometimes it'll take 15 to 30 days to get paid. So you got to have that working capital.
More like 60.
Yeah, but you got to have that working capital in place to carry that job. And one of the things we do at Liberty Bank, I mean, we look for ways to find ways to make those loans. I mean, we're looking for good loans. We have money to lend, but we have to be able to show the government, the regulatory bodies, that we've done our due diligence and the repayment ability is there.
That's what we talked about also. And I think off camera we talked about those handshake deals back 30, 40 years ago.
Those days are gone.
Yeah, right, those days are gone. And even Cascade Media, we've been around a minute.
Be renovated, fixed up, but getting, you know, individuals in those properties is what we need to work on. So I think there's great opportunity for growth in the real estate market now. It's somewhat stabilized because when you go back in 10, 11, there were a lot of foreclosures that had taken place. It used to be that the appraisals did not include foreclosures in their comps, but then they started including everything in the comps that really brought values down in our communities. We had a house that we unfortunately had to foreclose upon. We sold that house after someone had gone in and stripped everything out. I mean, even the mantle on the fireplace was gone.
They'll take the copper, the mantle. They'll even take the roaches with them.
The kitchen sink. They cleaned that house. We sold it, you know, basically just to get rid of it because we didn't do the work to fix it up. We had another house later. That property was one of the comps. You know, and you know that house, we sold it for I think $25,000. It was an $80,000 house, but they had it as a comp that brought another property's value down. You know, but those things happen. So today, I think the market has recovered greatly. There are opportunities for, you know, seeing good values, but people have got to realize you don't want to overprice your house. If you overprice it, it's not going to sell. If you price it right, it's selling quick.
What would you say to
Opportunity there. And
This program is brought to you by the Kansas City Business Association.